Speak with conviction, politely say no, and stand your ground on your pricing. Simply put, your time has value. What's going on? You're listening to episode 87 of the Perspective Podcast, and I'm your host, Scotty.D.Russell of Perspective Collective. This show is about carving out time to build something for yourself. I want to share what is and isn't working for me, along with sharing my guest point of view. This platform also allows me to cast the spotlight and celebrate those creating big waves in the community through interviews and a weekly dose of inspiration in the outro, so stick around to the end because it could be you. So today I have another short, sweet, but powerful episode for creatives hungry to hone their craft, build a name for themselves, and monetize their work. It's easy to get taken advantage of as we don't always understand the value of our time and the services we can provide. So settle in and consume this with an open mind. There is something worthwhile for creatives at any stage of their craft. You can find the show notes to this episode in a blog post format at perspective-collective.com/87. If you found value in this episode, please consider supporting the show by becoming a pledger at patreon.com/perspectivepodcast. With as little as much as your weekly cup of coffee, you can help this show reach more people who need it while helping me continue to improve the quality and bring on more help. What also helps the show grow is by sharing it on social media, subscribing, and leaving a ratings and review on Apple Podcast, aka iTunes, for those of you who haven't switched. And in the outro of each episode, I share a review from someone like you to publicly return the love. And finally, if you catch some inspiration from the show, create some work and tag me at Perspective Podcast on Instagram. I'll give it a share where I post each week's episode artwork and make sure you get some credit. Let's get into the show. Maybe this is something you can relate to. Over the years, you've busted your ass behind the scenes to build a name for yourself. You've lost track of all the countless hours you poured into your craft as you strive for that 10,000 hour mastery. You've invested boatloads of money into school, books, online courses, workshops, and conferences to put yourself in a position to thrive. Now you're to the point where you're steadily building a monetized side hustle or full-time business doing what you love. And if you're not there yet, stick with me. So here's the kicker. Not everyone outside of your bubble will understand where you are in your creative career. Many people, believe me, many people will perceive what you do as a hobby. They don't fully understand the value of your time and craft and feel they are doing you a favor by offering you the chance to work for exposure. And honestly, maybe you also don't fully understand your own value. So today's topic was inspired by two things. My good friend James Lewis, who showered us with value in episode 69, recently started an Instagram awareness campaign all about our time has value, so check out that hashtag. And second, I've had some recent local large-scale project inquiries offering free exposure work, thinking that they're doing me a favor and that, I owe them one. So my goal today isn't to convince you that doing free exposure work is an evil game for fools. In fact, I'll actually mention when doing so could be beneficial. My intentions are this: to make you believe that your time and skill set are valuable, and to fuel your hunger to relentlessly pursue the monetization of your craft, okay? To break that starving artist mentality. I am definitely no expert. I would never claim to be, but I hope my perspective on this topic can help you make a decision when you find yourself in this pickle. So let's get into when should or shouldn't you do free exposure work. So trust me, getting asked to work for exposure gets almost as old as getting asked what pen is that on Instagram. And type in that hashtag, what pen is that, and it kind of reads like something else. Kind of funny, but I digress. And honestly, the people who ask you for exposure work the most seems to be local businesses, okay? Those are the repeat offenders in my world. And what really grinds my gear is seeing people who produce far more jaw-dropping work than I do get asked by brands or companies who could easily afford it. I'm super lucky that my day job provides the essential income for me to survive, even though some days I'm just like, damn, I really wish I could do my thing full time. But my situation, the student loan debt that I took on, and, I need that steady paycheck at the moment. However, on the side, I do take freelance. And that freelance is necessary for me to, one, pay off that mountain of student loan debt I've accumulated from a private college. Two, help cover my wife's maternity leave since she doesn't get anything even though she works for the city, which is some major bullshit, by the way. 3, put money towards baby essentials. And 4, invest in cryptocurrency. And I'm only halfway kidding there. But to me, that's just another way to diversify my future retirement nest egg outside of 401k and IPERS and all that stuff. So many of my talented friends work for themselves full time, and they survive off paid gigs. For them, working for exposure may mean not being able to put food on the table or pay the rent. However, the situation might be favorable for them if it's from like a dream client. Like I've known someone who's done some Instagram work for exposure, and he gets to put their logo on their website, and that's landed him future jobs. So in that situation, it may be in your best interest. Who knows? Even though I feel like they could afford to pay. So before you become a judgy McJudgerson and think that I'm too good for free work, please digest my 7 situations when free work may be in your best interest episode, which would have been episode 27. And as I mentioned in that episode, there are moments where doing free exposure work or work for a good cause is totally encouraged. However, for this episode, let's stick to the free exposure work scenario. When you're transitioning from hobby to side project, working for exposure is great, especially if you have a day job that covers your living expenses. Now, I've said this before, but I did my first 3 murals for local businesses for free. And looking back on it now, why should someone trust that I do good work if I've never shown I could crush a large-scale mural before? Sometimes you need to prove it to them and yourself that you can deliver. Not only did these exposure opportunities show proof of concept and bring attention to my work, but these opportunities also built some solid relationships that attracted paid jobs in the future. When you've proven you can do the work and start to monetize your craft, this is where things can get tricky. When you're at that phase where you're elevating those side projects to a side business, exposure work doesn't cut the mustard anymore. So face the facts. Free exposure work doesn't pay off student loans, mortgages, maternity leave, baby doctor bills, groceries, gas, etc. The things you need to survive. You would never ask a plumber or a doctor to work for exposure, would you? How ridiculous does this sound? Hey, Mr. Plumber. If you could hook me up and fix my bursting water pipe beneath my cast iron sink, I would tell 10 friends about how great your work is. Honestly, someone may be crazy enough to pull this stunt, but expect a harsh and appalled reply. Over time, you'll unlock that level where you've proven you can deliver, and you'll slowly monetize your craft. When you reach this point, speak with conviction, politely say no, and stand your ground on your pricing. Simply put, your time has value. It's taken me almost 30 years to believe this about myself and the value I can provide others. If you're not monetizing your work yet and are in the hobby and side project phase, stay persistent and hungry. If a little fish like me from a small town of Cedar Falls, Iowa, can slowly make a name for myself over the years, then you are more than capable too. Keep working on your craft and value your time and work, even if that means taking on exposure work early on in the process. In good times, others will value your time and skills as well. All right, so another episode in the books as we inch closer and closer to episode 100. And just so you know ahead of time, I have some special things cooking, and I'll be asking a small favor for you in the coming month for it, so just stay tuned. But with today's topic, I hope you understand the value of your time and craft, yet realize when there's a right time to say yes to exposure work and when there's a time to say no. What we do is a privilege, and you gotta put in the work to blossom that hobby into a business. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. But I want this show to help coach you along the way so you can get to that level. And moving on to this week's dose of inspiration. This one goes out to Emily Miles of Emily Rose Artistry on the grams. Emily has a raw illustration and lettering style, but I think her greatest talent is her painting skills. The amount of detail she can capture in a scene is absolutely bananas, and I think she's going to have a stellar career if she keeps pushing her work and finding her unique style. Her recent work is incredible, and I highly recommend you check her out again at Emily Rose Artistry on Instagram. Let's talk about the Facebook community now. So if you're looking for accountability, a place to share your work, people to collaborate with, give and receive solid feedback, and get access to resources that'll elevate your creative game, then I highly compel and encourage you to check out the Perspective-Collective Facebook group. We have a thriving community building right now. We would love to have you be a part of the family. Hop onto Facebook and search for the Perspective-Collective to get involved with some rad people such as yourself. And if you're enjoying what you hear and you want to support the growth of the show, I have 3 ways you can make that happen. The first is by becoming a backer at patreon.com/perspectivepodcast, as mentioned in the intro. Your pledge not only helps support the growth of the show, but I do my best to hook you up with some rewards, so it's a win-win. The second way to support the show is for you crypto heads out there. In the show notes for each episode, I'll have addresses for Bitcoin, Ether, or Litecoin donations if you prefer to go that route. And finally, you can subscribe and leave a ratings review over on Apple Podcasts. It not only helps the show get discovered, but it gives me an opportunity to give you a nice little thank you plug like this week's rating and review. And this one is titled, Scotty Makes It Look So Easy on Instagram by Lucas Dand. So Scotty makes it look so easy on Instagram, but then makes it look real through his podcast. It's good to know that he struggles with the same doubt and fear that a noob like me gets saddled with. And he helps me get through it by putting himself on display and having real conversations with other designers. This is regularly one of my favorite podcasts to listen to. It always gets me fired up to go create something. Scotty's a great teacher and motivator. Lucas, thank you so much. I know we haven't had a chance to meet in person yet, but I know you're in the Facebook group providing a lot of value, and I see your work outside of social media. So thank you so much for taking the time to write out this thoughtful review. I sincerely appreciate it. And as I wrap things up, I want to give a huge thanks to Áine, Brennan for making this episode sound so good all the way from Ireland. Also, big thanks to Paige Garland, who's taken over the show notes and the newsletter for me so I can focus on bigger picture tasks. And a final huge thanks goes out to Nick Jenkins of Blookah for all the dope theme music you hear on this show. Check him out at SoundCloud or on Instagram at BLOOKAH, Blookah. And as you finish off your week strong, I want to continue to encourage you to keep showing up, keep putting in the work, and keep creating. You got this.